I found the most expensive PS5 controller. A big remake of a classic game just leaked, we're getting a huge Cyberpunk update very soon, and my favorite app on the PlayStation 5 just got a pretty good update. And before we jump into all this PlayStation news, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications set to all. So within the past month or two, there was a huge leak that actually happened twice with a bunch of games that Nvidia had on their list of stuff that's coming out in the future. Now people were kind of going back and forth on whether or not this list was real, but as time has gone on, a bunch of games that were on that list have been confirmed. And one of the games that was listed was a Chrono Cross remake. Now, Chrono Cross is not a game that I have a lot of experience with, but a lot of my friends do. It was a PS1 JRPG that's kind of like a spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger, which I had on the Super Nintendo and absolutely loved. I've heard over the years people mention this game as one of the best PS1 JRPGs, and they've always wanted it to be remastered and upscaled for the PS4 or PS5, and now it looks like they're getting exactly what they want. So obviously when people heard about this, they thought, oh, is this gonna be like the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 we got on the PS4? And it turns out that no, this is gonna be like a halfway in-between type deal that Square Enix usually does, like when they took Final Fantasy IV and put it on the Nintendo DS. They upscaled it to like 3D, but it wasn't necessarily as crazy as what we saw with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now this was actually leaked before the Nvidia leak happened, and the guy who leaked it initially assumed that this was going to be a PlayStation exclusive because it's a PS1 game. All of the fans who played it back on PS1 are probably still on the PS5, and Square Enix has a pretty good relationship with PlayStation. But since this showed up on the Nvidia leak, everyone's kind of saying, no, this is definitely not a PlayStation exclusive. It's probably going to come to at least PC. I just wouldn't expect it to be on Game Pass. That's where I'm sitting with it. It's gonna be on everything, but it's not gonna be like a Game Pass game. Maybe it'll be on PlayStation Now. Back in the PS3 days, we actually got a ton of PS2 remakes that were like upscaled and made HD, and a lot of those games played pretty well on the PS3. Sony would sell them in these packages that were like 40 bucks, and you'd get like Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, or all 3 Ratchet & Clank games, or Jak 1, 2, and 3 with like slight upscaling. And I always thought that was pretty cool, but what I really wanted is for them to start going back and remaking these PS1 games. So if they're already doing Chrono Cross, that hopefully means Metal Gear Solid 1 is at least on the horizon. I would really love to have Metal Gear Solid 1 remade for the PS5. Also, a better port of Symphony of the Night would be great. I don't need a full-on remake of that game. I especially don't want it to be like Metroid Dread, where it's like 2D, 3D, but if they could figure out how to like clean it up, get rid of the whole thing where if you die, you go back to the title screen and just make it look more HD, that would be awesome. Capcom is way ahead of the curve on this with their remakes of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. I've heard that they're remaking Resident Evil 4, and we actually got a leak of what Wesker looks like in that game, but what I would really like them to do is go back and remake Code Veronica X, because I have heard so many times that people love Resident Evil Code Veronica, but by the time I even learned about it, it was a little too dated for me. So if we're just talking about remakes from that era that I would like to see on the PS5 after Chrono Cross, we'll start with Metal Gear Solid. Hopefully we also get Resident Evil Code Veronica. If you're excited for a Chrono Cross remake on the PS5, make sure you let me know by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. But yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not necessarily the biggest JRPG guy, and Chrono Cross is one that I have not had a lot of experience with, so if you like it, make sure you let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, let me know some other PS1 games you'd like to see on the PS5. So just about a year after launch, Cyberpunk 2077 is finally having its big comeback moment. I know this has happened with games like Fallout 76 and No Man's Sky before, but Cyberpunk is one that I've been really curious about because it seemed like people were really mad about that game. I'm sure you know the whole story at this point. When it launched, it was only sent out for review on PC because that version of the game was actually pretty finished and ran and looked okay at the very least, you know what I'm saying? But then the PS4 and Xbox One versions were pretty much broken, and even if you played those on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, you were just getting like an upscaled version of the like last gen version, so it didn't look anywhere near as good as it did on PC. Now pretty much every patch that they've said they're going to release has been late. They don't address changes that people really wanted in the game. There's more bugs introduced than are fixed, but over the past few months, the patches have actually been pretty good, and everyone's been kind of wondering, when are we getting the full-on next-gen patch? Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Cyberpunk 2077 has been on sale on PS4 multiple times for like 10 bucks, so a lot of people are just going out and buying it on the PS4 so that when the PS5 version comes out, they just get that free upgrade. And as someone who played Cyberpunk 2077 on the PC when it came out, I really liked it. It was a great open world game, It had a really cool story. The actual shooting itself was great. It had cool guns. I just wish they had stuff like being able to change your character's appearance. I feel like that's a bare minimum thing. More randomized stuff to do, better dungeons, you know, like all the stuff that they said was going to be in the game at launch. And it looks like with that 1.5 next gen patch, they are going to start including some of these things that people want. I'm really crossing my fingers for a new game plus and being able to change the way your character looks, because I've wanted to go back and replay it since they started patching it and adding in all this content, but I don't want to completely start the game over. I'd like to keep all of those weapons I grinded for, keep all of my perks and all of my like skills and all the stuff I learned, because if you want to play Cyberpunk 2077 and get through the story, it takes like 30-40 hours, but if you want to do it all, you're playing 60-70 hours, and that's what I did. So yeah, love to see New Game Plus, would love to see how this next gen patch looks, and I'd love to see some more quality of life improvements. And the user reviews shot all the way up to very positive for the game, which is crazy considering how low they started. I know the same thing happened with Fallout 76. I don't know, I just feel like the user base on Cyberpunk 2077 was much bigger, so overcoming all of those negative reviews and getting the game mostly positive or very positive wherever it's at right now, that's crazy, and I'm glad that they're getting a little bit of praise, because I saw a lot of the developers on Twitter saying that they really appreciated it. I just wish they didn't hide so much stuff in all of their like patch releases and apologies and stuff like that. Like, be more transparent, CD Projekt, and we'll be good. But yeah, the 1.5 patch is coming in Q1 2022, and the teams that were working on that, getting that already, they're all starting to shift over to the first big DLC expansion for the game. So somehow, some way, the future is looking somewhat bright for Cyberpunk 2077.
That's what I'm talking about!
I have both my Xbox Series X and PS5 plugged into the same TV, and for pretty much the last year, I was using the Series X as my media center device, right? It had all the apps I needed, and most of the apps on the Series X were able to do 4K HDR, really max out what you would want out of apps like that. But then I bought the remote for the PS5 when I did an accessories video, and that kind of switched me over because I wasn't using the battery in my DualSense or my Series X controller. And then I noticed that the YouTube app on the PS5 frustratingly did not have HDR. And I've seen a lot of people actually on Twitter and Reddit complaining about this, but thankfully Sony went over to YouTube and strong-armed them, and we are getting an update soon that adds HDR. I know I just said soon, but as it turns out, the update is available now. So if you've really been wanting HDR with your YouTube videos, especially this one, if you're watching it on your TV right now, make sure you go update your YouTube app on your PS5 and you'll be good to go. Next, they got to figure out how to get HBO Max to stream in 4K. I cannot believe it doesn't do that on the PS5. I'm 99% sure it does on the Xbox Series X, and even my like Roku TV that I have in my bedroom, it has like a 4K Roku in it. That thing streams 4K. So if like a Roku that I'm plugging into my TV's USB port can get me some 4K action with, I don't know, Zack Snyder's Justice League, I really want my PS5 that's plugged into my OLED to do it as well. I feel like that's not really like a request. I'm sitting here justifying updating HBO Max to stream in 4K on a PS5, but I feel like I shouldn't have to. And while I'm thinking about this, one app that's been suspiciously absent from the PlayStation ecosystem from the very beginning is Shudder. I love Shudder. It's a horror streaming service that has its own original stuff. I watched The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs religiously with all my friends. It's great. The problem is they don't have it on PlayStation, and they really need to get it. And every time someone asks the Shudder support account on Twitter, they just go, yeah, we're working on it. We'll get an app out soon. So yeah, what we need is 4K streaming on HBO Max and Shudder to be on the PS5, and then we're golden. At the beginning of the video, I teased the most expensive PS5 controller, and when you see this thing, you're gonna understand why it costs so much. So a company called Fanatec has come out with a controller called the DD Pro that's a racing wheel. It's actually like a full racing setup that is going to cost $970. Now looking at this thing, I kind of rolled my eyes and scrolled past it, but then my friend got me to click on it, and I saw kind of why it costs so much. The build quality on this thing is insane for one thing, and another, Polyphony Digital teamed up with these guys to make it like the official Gran Turismo 7 racing wheel. Now I had to dig pretty deep in the website to find out what consoles this thing works with, because Gran Turismo 7 is also coming to the PS4, and as it turns out, it not only works with the PS5, it works with the PS4, the Xbox, and the PC. No matter where you're using this Gran Turismo branded wheel, you're going to be able to use it, which is crazy. And they even have a little disclaimer that says, yeah, Fanatec tested this thing on all these different devices, but Polyphony Digital and Sony, they don't endorse it for PC and Xbox. They don't care. They don't even have to know. We're gonna keep it secret. I mean, I said I had to dig pretty deep in the website, so I wouldn't be surprised if they are keeping it secret. Shh. So on the website, it says it has 8 Newton meters of torque, and I didn't really know what that meant with the racing wheel because I thought torque was like an engine thing, but there's no engine connected to the wheel. As it turns out, that's basically the force feedback you're getting from the wheel. So when you go into a curve and you're kind of fighting against the car itself, you'll feel it on the racing wheel. And I guess 8 Newton meters is like a lot or something. I don't know. If you're gonna consider buying this thing for almost $1,000, you know what Newton meters are. I'm pretty sure. Now the stock version of it comes with a 2-pedal setup, which means you're getting gas and brake, but you can also get a 3-pedal setup, and that is where I know what I'm talking about. The 3rd pedal is the clutch. I actually drove a stick shift Chevy Cruze for pretty much all of college and then a few years after, and my first car before that was a 92 Jeep Wrangler that was also a stick shift. So I know that if you have a 3-pedal setup, you've got a clutch there. So if I was buying this racing wheel, I'd probably go with the one with the clutch because I want to get all of the performance out of the game I'm playing. Like I can imagine plugging this thing into Forza Horizon 5 and using the clutch. That'd be pretty cool. I don't really play Gran Turismo, but they should come out with MotorStorm again, right? That would be a cool arcade racing game that I could get into on PlayStation, the PS5, my preferred console. But for now, all I have is Forza Horizon 5. I guess they could update Destruction All-Stars, that like PS Plus game we got when the PS5 came out that nobody really liked. They could go back and update it and say, yeah, just so you guys know, not only is the team that made this working on the next Twisted Metal, they also included support for this $1,000 racing wheel because they've got their priorities figured out. So right now the Wikipedia for Gran Turismo 7 says it comes out on March 4th, the day after my birthday, and the same day as the Batman, which I'm just gonna be real here, I'm more excited for the Batman than Gran Turismo 7. But for some reason this racing wheel comes out March 14th, which is a full 10 days after Gran Turismo. Now, the fact that this thing is sponsored to the point where you've got the Gran Turismo logo at the center of the steering wheel, I would say that that kind of lets us know that they might be delaying Gran Turismo just a little bit more. I feel like since they're porting it over to the PlayStation 4, they've got a little more work to do there, especially making the PS5 version look even better than the PS4 version. It would make sense to me if they push it a little bit. Also, February is like absolutely stacked for games. We have Horizon Forbidden West on the PlayStation 5. We've got Dying Light 2. We got Elden Ring, I think is pretty close to there. There are a ton of games coming out this February. I am forgetting so many. So giving Gran Turismo some space seems smart, especially from Forza Horizon 5, which is like, people are so pissed at the Game Awards right now that it's not getting Game of the Year nominations because it's like one of the best rated games of 2021. I think the only one that might have it beat is Deathloop, and even that one might be below Forza Horizon 5. So I don't know. Either way, this thing's $970. It comes out March 14th, and if you want it, you probably already have it pre-ordered because this thing is nuts. Anyway, guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.